Hello and welcome. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Samuel Ashkenazy, or as you might know by my production logo, ScareWorks. From a very young age, I dreamed of making horror movies and ultimately owning my own production company called ScareWorks. In Boy Scouts, my Pinewood Derby car was the ScareWorks Racer. I guess what I'm trying to say is, I had a plan for how my life was going to go. What little me didn't realize, though, was the insane challenge I had signed myself up for. Excluding obstacles along the way, making movies is one of the hardest collaborative art forms in the world. With the oversaturation of content these days and the looming threats of AI, as an aspiring filmmaker, I've noticed a loss of appreciation for what we do behind the camera, and the sheer effort it takes to get these stories told. Today, in our pilot episode, we're talking about our journey to get a project funded, and my most recent release, Passion Fruit Nick's Story. I'll be joined by the star of Nick's Story, Lorenzo Kortright, and my director of photography, Alessandro Imperiale. My name is Samuel Ashkenazy, and this is the Works Podcast. Some context. During the pandemic, I had been writing a lot. One of the things I wrote was a screenplay called Passion Fruit, a feature-length horror film about a group of friends who think that they've discovered the tree of life, and in their lust for its fruit, it kind of exposes all their own rotten cores. This was the first screenplay I had ever sent out to festivals. I had been writing since second grade, but the pandemic made me realize that the opportunities were not coming unless I created them. And so, I was off, picking out screenplay competitions on Film Freeway and Coverfly. The first festival I submit to, Airflix Film Festival, happened to be announcing their winners on January 9th, my birthday. It seemed almost predetermined, but on January 9th, I woke up to my first ever award for writing. So I kept at it, and in just a few months, I had won awards from Los Angeles to New York. Part of the joys of making movies and telling these stories is getting other creative, talented people to believe in you and believe in the work that you do. That collaboration and on-set inspiration is kind of what's threatened with the likes of AI. Nick's Story is a featurette, a proof of concept in many ways, detailing some of the themes and ideas you'd find in the feature-length Passion Fruit movie. It is available on ScareWorks.net right now to rent or buy. This conversation will contain some spoilers, so if you haven't had the opportunity yet, please go check it out and come back to hear some of the amazing stories we have from set. Passion Fruit Nick's Story premiered just over a month ago. Guys, how are we feeling? Lorenzo, I'll start with you.
Honestly, it's surreal that it's even happened and that we're here right now, doing a podcast about it. I'm just still taking everything in, I'm a first timer. I'm coming from being a complete nobody in the acting world, so it's definitely a lot to take all in at the time, but it's definitely rewarding experience. Gonna be learning a lot from this.
Al?
Well, I think you would have fooled everyone with it being your first time, but on my end, more the technical side, I'm not necessarily a director of photography by trade. I'm usually a gaffer. I try to be a little more selective with things that I DP. But besides all that, just being a technician, you kind of see projects come and go, and you don't really think much of it. But I have to say this was one of the first real projects that I was really happy to be a part of. I think more of a personal note, I was able to show this to my family and feel proud that I worked on it. And that's unfortunately something that you don't really get to do and everything, especially when you make a career out of it, You work a lot of jobs that are more for the income than they are for the story, which, it's okay. It helps you to make the good stories when the time comes.
Yeah, of course. And all those jobs, though, have honed your skills over the years that you've been doing it. And I mean, it shows in the work that we accomplished here. As we walked out of the premiere that night, everybody kind of on our team was getting compliments from your cinematography and, the editing choices that we made, your acting over here, the music that we had chosen for the short. I mean, everything really came together in a very cohesive way. And I felt that we had such a kind of wonderful response at the premiere. Um, we had a decent turnout, which is hard enough as is, on a short independent film, to get people to come out on a Thursday night, no less. Um, but leaving the theater, I heard nothing but the positive reactions that I kind of wanted, that I think we were all hoping for. Um, and then, of course, we look at the landscape right now, and it's like the industry is kind of turned upside down a little bit, and I think it's becoming more and more lost on people how much work sometimes it really does take to get a good one. Something really worth the time and effort, because we've been at this for over a year now, and we still haven't gotten funding for this. And whether it's good or bad is kind of, I think, irrelevant. Projects get funded all the time that aren't, good or bad, or, any real, descriptor. It's just, it's the process of actually getting that foot in the doorway. It's the process of meeting people and getting connections and learning from other talented people. I've learned, so much from all of you, as we were sitting there working on set together. And those experiences are just so, invaluable. You can't really get that in any other field.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think like one of the challenges, just to kind of, circle back on what you were talking about, how, it's been a little over a year now, and, we're still kind of working on like getting certain aspects of traction. We have gotten many aspects of traction, but it's a never-ending process, as it goes in the entertainment industry. But, I think part of that is a result of, the entertainment industry still being a business, and it's kind of like the clash of like where does business and art like stop and start? Like, where do you draw the line? And everybody's going to have their own definition of it, but I guess at the end of the day, the only people that really whose definitions matter are the people with the money, right?
Yeah.
They kind of dictate a lot.
Absolutely.
I'm sure it's a whole other discussion that will be too long to go into for this particular episode.
Lorenzo, we kind of touched on it. This was your first feature. This is your first time really acting on screen. And, like Al kind of alluded to, you fooled most of us. I mean, you did an amazing job, man. Talk about...
I kind of fooled myself.
Talk about kind of the experience, like finding out about the role, preparing for it. What was this like for you? What was this journey like for you?
Yeah, so it was about over a year ago, around March 2022. I just got a text message from my high school friend, Gospel. And at this point, I feel like I'd probably just talking his head off about, I want to try film, like while I'm on stage doing theater. And one day he sends me a flyer for Passion Fruit, and I have about a month to prepare. And in that flyer is to just prepare an angry monologue. So I didn't necessarily know what kind of monologue I should choose. I just chose a monologue and just try to just make it angry in my own way. And, luckily enough, I was able to secure the starring role. And I would say I was very surprised for myself, because I was never put into a leading role before. And it was, a lot to just, accept and take in. And
so now when you're talking about, like, it's a lot to accept and take in, just describe kind of that feeling, like once you got the part. Nick is a very troubled person. I mean, for anybody who's seen this short already, or anybody who kind of knows some of my writing material already, they know that Nick is very lost, to say the least. And he's a tough headspace to get into. And I imagine that coming to set on the 2 weeks that we did this, not every day was particularly easy. I'm sure there was times where you're sitting there and, it's got to be difficult to get into that headspace as a young actor. Like, how did you, deal with that? How did you figure that out?
It was actually really tough to, finally get into that headspace. But honestly, with the help of you guys along the way, I really, felt more comfortable in my skin and my acting abilities. And I just kind of just went out there and winged it almost, like in the sense of, you know, like when the camera's on, you just go for it. Because I know I would have some anxieties come out, you know, but it was definitely, I'd say it was definitely a rewarding experience to just break out of my shell and just go after it, you know, get into that negative mindset that's actually not too hard to actually get into. It's actually kind of hard to get out of the negative mindset.
I don't know. You know, the field that we work in is a nonlinear field. There's no definitively correct way to do anything. There's only what, you know, makes you do something that people like and, you know, that you feel portrays the message that you want to portray. And that's what makes this field, like, so bizarre, right? Is like, you know, I don't know, take for instance, you want to be a doctor, right? You know, there's kind of a procedure that you follow. You know, you go to medical school, you get a degree, you know, prove your skills and your talents to your peers, and then there's kind of, you know, work that's lined up afterwards. But in the entertainment industry, because everybody kind of has their own way of defining things and there's no, like, definitively correct way to do things, it kind of muddies the waters as to, like, how you get to that point where, like, you do this for a living or as a career or anything like that, you know?
Part of the struggle, I think, also doing it as a career is, like, unless you get on a good TV show, you know, there's nothing consistent. You know, this is a career where you're constantly, you know, chomping at the bit. You know, you're constantly looking for new work. You know, unless you're really established, you know, and you could, like, you know, take some time. But I mean, for the most part, I mean, this is a career where you're constantly have to be moving. You know, it's a career where you literally have to adapt at every turn. I think it's also probably one of the most fast evolving fields you could possibly be entering right now, because the landscape is just generally changing. You know, people's perspective towards media is changing. Their attention spans are changing. The media itself is changing. You know, whether that be more for, like, a move towards more immersive content, or even shorter, more digestible content, right? You know, there's so much complaints about whenever a long movie comes out now. You know, I don't want to sit for Dune for 3 hours in a movie theater, but I'll spend 7 hours on Netflix. You know, it's strange, but this is where we're at. There was a lot of strange things that happened on this set. You know, a lot of very strange coincidences that if we told you, you'd probably think we were lying. Probably starting with our walk through Blydenburg.
Yeah.
You know, first day of shooting, we had many of you are probably familiar with the scene where Nick finds the rest hut on his walk into the woods. And in that rest hut, there happens to be a series of drawings depicting a monster eating a fruit,
Particularly an apple.
particularly an apple.
Yeah.
And that was actually there. That was already there. Some artisan had just drew that. I don't even know when, months, weeks, days, hours, who knows, before we got there. And we just had amazing inspiration on set right there. Even crazier, above where we shot, written on the ceiling was the line, "Nick was here." next to a house with 4 graves.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody who knows the Passion Fruit screenplay or has read it directly from me knows that that is eerily similar to some of the events that take place in the movie itself.
The feature.
The feature, the would-be feature.
Just to clarify.
Just to clarify. Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, that was just a particularly strange moment that I think kind of took all of us off guard. I guess it kind of felt, though, in a way that it was almost meant to be, in a sense. You know, I mean, something so on the nose, it's almost like preordained in a sense.
Some people that believe in a higher power might consider it a sign.
Yeah. You know. What other crazy things happened on set that I'm blanking on right now?
Oh man. Well, I think a lot of the nature shots that we got, you know, like we kind of just found them.
Yeah.
Right? Like how like the leaf, you know, covered the lens. Like that was kind of like, I don't want to say it was complete coincidence because we had an idea of what we wanted, but just like getting that on like the first take, right? Like just shots that in theory should be more complicated to get because you're kind of like relying on chance to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And there were like just so many instances where we had one takes on things that we were prepared to spend like hours capturing.
Yeah.
Which is also part of the reason why like we had like 8-hour days typically on like what we thought would be longer days. Like
we were the most efficient crew I've ever seen, honestly. For those of you who don't know, I mean, we crowdfunded $4,300 for this project. The rest of it was matched by myself. And, you know, suffice to say, there was corners that we cut here. We had no sound technician for this whole project, really. I was operating a makeshift boom that we had for most of the shoot. We didn't really have an editor. Alessandro and I edited this together. You know, there was a lot of, you know, we all took on multiple roles during the production of this. And I think we got away with it. You know, I mean, I think, you know, all things considered, I think things came out pretty good.
Yeah, it's kind of a shock to me, like considering, you know, the funding and access to crew and all that, you know, we produced something of the quality that it is.
Yeah.
I mean, there are projects that I've worked on that are, you know, so many magnitudes higher in budget that really, you know, don't even come close to like the quality, like the visual quality and the audio quality of like what we put out. And obviously, you know, there's exceptions to that. There are moments where the audio could be better. And,
sure.
You know, we could have had more time to like nail a shot with like a little bit of a sharper focus at certain moments. But, you know, it's an indie film. That's the part and parcel and the risk that you take when, you know, you jump into a project like this. And frankly, for what we had, I was very, very pleased with what we put out.
So, truth be told, I mean, the night of the premiere, I think I had one person come up to me and they were like, "Oh, you know, if I was the director, I would have done the shot this way," which is something any filmmaker, I'm sure, loves hearing the second they've premiered their movie. But one thing that I will throw in there is, you know, I agree with him. I would have loved to redo the shot. The problem is that, you know, we're limited. You know, we only have so much time to accomplish what we have here, and so much money to do it. You know, part of this whole process has been trying to get funding for this, but in the interim, you know, this has been very much a blood, sweat, and tears effort. You know, I mean, a lot of people on this project really sacrificed to make this as good as it is. I think for me personally, as I've been seeing a lot of the news lately of, you know, the writer's strike going on right now and the AI kind of threatening the whole industry as a whole. You know, I mean, like threatening everything, whether it be music or whether it be movies or any kind of digestible content. You know, I think one thing that scares me the most about that is losing these kind of interactions on set. You know, these kind of moments where you do have these genuine kind of moments of inspiration, you know, these kind of special things that aren't necessarily written on the page, you know, they weren't thought of before you got to set that day. you know, and it just kind of happens. Um, I remember one of my favorite shots in the movie is something that you got with. Honestly, I don't even remember if I was aware of you getting it. Was at our tree.
I know exactly the shot. Please describe it for the audience. I know exactly what you're talking about.
There's a shot when Nick first wakes up underneath the tree, and I think I was back at the car preparing all the apples that were going to be hung on the tree later on, and Alessandro got this shot of Nick just waking up and kind of looking away or kind of shading his eyes from the sun, and it uh, without stroking your ego too much, Al. It kind of even reminded me of a Kubrick shot. It was it kind of struck me as this really special angle, and it's there's really nothing about it that should be special, but for some reason, just the way it hits me, there's this kind of profound look to it. And you know that's something that you're not going to as an average audience member, you're not going to understand the kind of nuanced and kind of impossibility of some of these shots. There's no way you could have known that that might have been my favorite shot in the movie.
Yeah, not at all. I never would have guessed that.
But I mean, it's definitely up there in like my top three. Right up there with like blowing the marshmallow out. Like
that made the final
that was definitively my favorite shot.
Yeah, I mean, and of course, like the way the music hits it, like right at that moment where the violin comes up, I mean, it's just it strikes such a chord. A lot of that montage, actually, honestly, there's so many shots in there that we kind of just got on the fly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. A lot of that day when we shot it, we were just driving around from location to location and just filming really you guys having a good time. Between the playground scene, one of the shots that I really love, especially the color correction on it, is the shot of Sammy going down the slide.
Yeah.
There's this certain grayness about it that she's so happy in the shot, but there's this kind of motte overtone for it that kind of lingered with me after I saw the movie, or at least after I saw it in the edit, 100 million times.
Yeah.
Which shouldn't be lost on our viewers either, by the way. You have no idea how many edits it takes to get to the final cut that you're seeing. Hundreds and hundreds of hours to get to that point. Not to mention all of the edits that Michele did over in Italy for the music.
The true paisano.
Yeah. That was another crazy experience, actually. Let's talk about Michele.
That's a good discussion.
So while we were crowdfunding this movie, we were crowdfunding this on Indiegogo, which for any independent filmmaker, I highly recommend. This is a great platform in order to get funding. It has flexible funding, which is not available on all those platforms. That does kind of allow you to get the ball rolling even if you don't hit your goal. That's kind of what we did with this. That's what got us to this point. During that campaign, though, this composer over in Italy reached out to us, and it's ultimately the composer that we ended up using. I kind of jumped at the opportunity, to be honest. The idea of kind of working with somebody halfway across the world in a collaborative effort, I thought was actually a really exciting idea. And I honestly, he kind of nailed it. I can't really say anything negative about the guy. I mean, like every single piece of music that he used in this was beautiful. I hate to tout our own stuff so much, but I mean, in particular, like I think our montage, is like this highlighting moment where the music really kicks in. And I remember even while we were watching it in the theater, the whole room was quiet. People were really glued to the screen. I think people were really at that point really invested in what was going on, with the characters, with trying to figure out, okay, how is this going to take a turn? I've gotten a lot of comments since the premiere of, well, I thought it was going one way and then it didn't, and that was kind of one of our goals in a sense. I mean, there is a little bit of a lead on that I think maybe a more mainstream picture might have taken, which is Nick does something sexual with Tessa.
We should talk about, because you and I had a very lengthy discussion of like, how do we make sure that the audience does not get this feeling? And it was like such a challenging thought, because a lot of it was like in the face, right? Because like there's a lot of moments that Tessa and Nick share, the characters, where they're kind of exchanging like this mutual understanding, but we need to make sure that it doesn't relate to that of a partner, but that of a family.
Yes.
Right? Because like that's part and parcel of like the whole reason you're telling the story is like we're kind of portraying like the death of a man's soul.
Yeah.
Right? And like, how do you do that? You show what he's losing.
Yeah.
You show the happiness that he has and how that's like stolen from him.
Yeah.
Or how he steals it from himself.
Yeah.
Essentially. But yeah, that I remember we had, gosh, I've lost track of how many discussions we've had about making sure that people did not get that feeling.
And it wasn't like a day discussion. I mean, this took place over weeks, weeks and weeks and weeks of like really figuring out, we don't want to mislead the audience too much. But at the same time, I still got comments from the audience where they were like, I did think it was going that direction until something happened here or something happened there. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with a little misdirection.
Just fighting the grain. Fighting people's expectations. That's okay.
To be honest, it's kind of an exciting feeling too, seeing an audience member think that they know what's going to happen and then kind of pulling the rug out from under them. I think that's kind of a feeling I really like doing in storytelling, is pulling the rug out. Passion Fruit, I think the movie has a moment where there's definitely the rug is definitely pulled out from underneath the characters. In Nick's story, I think Nick's story is, all kind of setting the stage for what we're going for here, and I think the reason that we did that is because we're trying to gauge some interest. We're trying to get people to understand the ideas that we're going for and the themes that we're going for, but we're trying to do it on a level where we could do it affordably and you still, understand what we were going for. And that's like, for anybody that's ever like tried to do something on this level, that's like almost an impossible feat sometimes.
The thing too you have to think about is like there's always a trade-off, right?
Of course.
So like what you don't invest in money, you're probably pretty likely to invest in time.
Yeah.
And that's depending on your situation, one might be more favorable than the other. And we were like, well, we don't have a lot of money, but we have time.
Yeah.
So we use that time for pre-production, for planning, for your rehearsal with the actors. So a lot of it comes down to good management.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, how do you conduct yourself and organize yourself? And that's kind of like, I don't know, the same way that you organize your own life, and I don't know what you do with your time. It's like a condensed version of that in a way. So fortunately, I think you have very good time management skills. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been making 8-hour days and, shot this entire thing in the time that we did.
Yeah.
While still maintaining a certain look and integrity that I was mostly happy with.
Yeah, I mean, while I appreciate that, I think one of the biggest blessings that we had on this set was that all of our mains came prepared.
Yes.
At no point did Lorenzo or Sammy or Abby, none of them really ever missed a beat.
Yeah. We should talk about Dan.
We should talk about Dan.
I don't think people know Dan, though, his actual name. Who
yeah,
the character relates to.
So the character of Tucker in the movie, in Passion Fruit Nick's story, I should clarify, the character of Tucker has a scene with Nick where they are smoking, and Tucker may or may not have planted the idea in Nick's head that he could start working for their drug dealer. In this scene, Dan plays the part beautifully.
So spot on.
Spot on. And you'd probably never know that he definitely is not a smoker.
Oh boy.
Oh,
Yeah.
whoops. And at one point, God, he's gonna hate us for telling this story. But at one point, Dan leans forward to smoke the CBD that we have on set, and his hair droops forward and lights on fire while he's smoking the bong. And there's definitely a video of Lorenzo watching his life flash before his eyes, like jumping off the couch.
I was all over that night.
Yeah.
I really thought
Certainly
it was
some
all...
memes that could be created from that.
Oh, yes.
If we were a less decent type of people.
She's a fire starter.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. So we get funded for our next project. Make memes out of it.
Yeah, no, that definitely
right,
that was
so,
one of the more thrilling moments on set. That's for sure. I definitely saw my whole career end for a moment.
Oh yeah.
Before it even started.
Yeah.
But you know,
Maybe I'll
just
tell
another
the
great
story.
memory.
Just
I hope Dan feels that way too.
So
Yeah.
When we were first preparing for the auditions for this, so many strange coincidences, honestly, just in the audition alone. First, let's just start off by saying, you know, I had posted about this audition online, and I had told people, you know, message me and I'll put you on the list and make sure that, you know, you're checked off when you come here. And almost all the actors that had said they were going to come to the audition didn't, and almost all the actors that did show up to the audition were surprises. One of the actors that showed up to that audition that was a surprise was, of course, Lorenzo right here. And he did kind of drop a little bit of a bomb on me. You wanna explain that one?
Yeah, so he asked me, how did I get here? And I said, your mom. And immediately he looked offended. But I had to clarify that I did have his mother as my 8th grade music teacher. And she kind of got me into the Beatles. Actually, no, she did get me into the Beatles. And that actually was like the first thing, I was very passionate about was music, was, you know, classical rock music. And that kind of just like led into, you know, going into choir, or at least trying out for choir. And because I just had a passion for entertainment. I don't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I just knew I just wanted to provide smiles on people's faces and just, you know, just be my weird self. And so choir led to trying out for theater. And theater is a mix of music and acting. And I definitely always just wanted to, you know, just test my fields in different areas. So when I got the flyer to Passion Fruit, I saw his last name. And I was like, oh my God, I haven't seen that last name in years. It has to be. Like, it has to be a full circle moment here. So like,
There's only
I
like
just
8 of us in the world.
Yeah.
So.
So I had to jump at the opportunity just to say that. Yeah.
So Lorenzo shows up to this audition. He tells me that he knows my mom. And admittedly, Lorenzo was a little bit nervous on his first audition. And
Nervous now.
don't be nervous now. We're just hanging out with the whole world. So I called Lorenzo back for a second audition. He really fit the bill as Nick. The second he walked on stage, I kind of had this feeling like, oh, I want him as that character. And I was kind of not accepting a bad first audition. I knew that he was in there, and we just had to find him. So I told Lorenzo to come back with a separate monologue prepared. The monologue that I asked him to prepare was the monologue from the morning show, where Steve Carell loses his mind when he gets fired from not NBC. And Lorenzo comes in, and might I just say, absolutely killed that monologue. You could have taken Steve Carell jobs. Steve Carell, I want to work with you though. Please don't ever listen to that. Ignore what I just said. But while you showed up to that audition, you were wearing the exact same jacket as Al was wearing that day, which again, like, just out of the strange coincidences here, I mean, what are the chances you two are wearing the same jacket? What are the chances you're, know my mom and had her as a teacher? I mean, so much of this kind of came together in this very strange way, kind of unforgettably so.
Yeah. You know what's funny about the jacket though? I'll never forget. So, he shows up wearing the same jacket. I'm like, wow, you got good taste. Why'd you show up with that? And he's like, I thought it was something that a homeless person would wear.
I felt so bad.
They like show the jacket, and I'm like, oh yeah, like, should try this one on. Then it's older than yours. It'll fit the bill. Great.
Well, Al,
like, he's a keeper.
Function over fashion, right?
It's got to be something good about it. I'm wearing it.
Yeah, that's right. Thrifting is like the greatest way to get costumes for a movie ever.
Absolutely.
$10 and it gets the whole wardrobe.
Savers gift card coming in clutch, right?
I remember the pants being actually too big. Al had to take his like a shoestring or a string from his
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
He had to make a
Yes.
makeshift belt for that.
I remember, like, even there was this one scene, we didn't even end up using it, I don't think. We had shot you running down the hill,
Yes.
and Al was laying on the ground filming up, and you jumped over the camera, and you're literally, like, holding your pants up, like, just trying
to keep
trying not to, like, have them fall down while you run.
Oh my god. Yeah.
It kind of reminds me, for our ScareWorks viewers that know our previous film, it kind of reminds me of when we had Danielle constantly throwing up on Billy for a shot that we ultimately never used.
That was definitely like, that was somebody's fetish, and I'm like, it felt wrong, kind of, but I'm glad I didn't make
somebody's fetish. I wrote it. I mean,
yeah, right. You have some explaining to do, Sam.
Look, you know what? As long as I'm not as bad as Levinson, that's okay.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, so many of these moments I kind of, you can't help but kind of treasure, and I hope that as we continue this journey, we're going to have more of them. I think that, we still have a lot of work to do, and there's still a lot to come with Passion Fruit. And we're going to continue building this world. We're going to continue trying to get this project funded. And we're just going to keep working and doing other stuff. But, until that is done, you guys can all keep checking back with us on ScareWorks.net. You could check us you could check with us on ScareWorks on Instagram. If you want to follow Alessandro or Lorenzo, they're going to drop their users right now.
Broadway Zoe.
There you go. And for my Instagram, it's _IMPERIALE, Imperiale.
Boom. If you got that, good on you. If you're driving, I'm so sorry. But they're all linked on my page as well. They all do really great work, and you should check out both of them. And along with the rest of the cast as well. They all couldn't be here today because the podcast room is only so large, but hopefully they will be joining us in the future. Abby Gumper, Dan Pavicic, who else am I missing out of our main cast? Sammy Lemza.
Right.
Yeah,
absolutely. Sammy. Maybe Dylan.
Dylan, of
Mason.
course.
Mason.
Mason. I mean, all of our cast, honestly, were really very talented people. And I think that kind of brings me to my last point, which is I certainly work better when I'm surrounded by creative people that believe in what we're doing. I'm sure that you guys can agree to that as well. I think like being in class, right? Sometimes a teacher makes or breaks a class, and I think for me, being on a movie that I think is important and tells a good story and may possibly affect people one day. You know, I think that really means the world to me. You know, I think being able to get it on your televisions and share something with you is kind of the honor of a lifetime, you know, and I wouldn't want to do anything else with my life but, you know, share these stories with all of you. And I think Al and Lorenzo and kind of everybody that worked on this feels pretty similarly. You know, I think this is something that, you know, makes our world spin. You know, making movies, you know, there's a bit of a cheapness to it these days because there's so much of it. But if you really pay attention and you kind of look in between some of the bigger releases, you find gems out there. And I'm not just talking about us now. You know, I'm talking about a lot of the independent filmmakers out there that aren't necessarily getting you know, front and center billing right now. Please give them a chance. You know, please give us a chance. We're working really hard to make content that's worth your while. We want to do something that moves you. We want to do something that sticks with you, you know. But we could only do that, unfortunately, with money, you know. And we're working really hard to get to that point. We're working really hard to make sure that we could tell these stories the way they're meant to be told. You know, these characters deserve respect, I think. You know, as any self-obsessed writer would say, you know, I mean, these characters are extensions of myself, you know, and they deserve love and care, you know, and I think any artist in this field would kind of feel similarly to that, you know, and this is all just a process to kind of get to that point. And if I'm rambling at this point, I'm going to turn it over to these guys for their final thoughts. Final thoughts for you guys.
I just want to shout out both of you guys for just helping me throughout the whole process and really like engaging with me one-on-one, because I really thrive off of just like one-on-one teaching. And with you two great minds, I was really, you know, proud to see like what we were able to accomplish, and you guys helped me to get to where I am now. So thank you guys both.
Thank you, man.
No, thank you. Boy, I don't even really know what to say. I've always wanted to tell a good story. That's kind of, you know, that's what started me in my pursuit to, you know, have a career in this industry. And I think this is a pretty damn good shot at that. So I'm really glad that I got to be a part of a process that I feel is a good story. And I hope that we get to continue doing that. Because, you know, it's the lessons of life and, you know, thousands of years of, you know, mistakes and follies and successes are documented by these stories and give people something of a guideline on, you know, maybe what they can do, you know, to make their lives more fulfilling. So I don't know if what we're doing is that deep, but it's worth giving it a shot.
I agree. And with that, guys, we're going to conclude the podcast today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you want to check out more ScareWorks content or keep following the Works podcast, we'll be releasing one of these every month. And follow our newsletter and subscribe on our website for any content coming soon, or ways to get involved, or any crowdfunding campaigns that we might be running.